Welcome back to the Wolverine.com podcast, television version this time around because you needed to see who was the man behind the curtain, and that man, of course, is Doug Karsch, your daily man on the radio on 97.1 FM, and also your sideline man on Michigan radio every week at the football games. Doug, good to see you.
Hi, JB.
Literally,
How are you?
I'm
Yeah,
doing.
well, I like this format you guys got going here. So, you guys have really upgraded the technology, haven't you?
Well, we're trying, and I will say this: if when it comes to you, the people on the fort, if they don't hear from you or see you in this case during football season, they'd come and get you. So I'm sparing you from that.
Thank you.
Um, Obviously, huge week for Michigan football. They go to Penn State. We've had some really interesting times out there over the years. Remember all the way back to Judgment Day in '97. This isn't Judgment Day, but it is, don't get hit by the bus day in terms of if Michigan loses this game. I think it's lost a lot in terms of trying to make Ohio State and the end of this season everything it can be.
Well, look, let's face it. This Michigan team is gotten to a place that very few people predicted. In fact, in your preseason magazine, I read that I predicted that they would go 5-7 when somebody at the publisher's office confused the name Skeen with Karsch. And so Skeen 5-7 prediction went to print as Karsch's 5-7 prediction. But what they've done so far this year, when you think back to what the major concerns were at the beginning of the year, most of them were defensive, right? I mean, it was who's going to be in the middle of that defensive line, who's going to play backer. The secondary was coming off a really, really tough year. And all of those things on all three levels, they're better than expected. Right now, Michigan has elite rush ends. And I heard in your podcast over the weekend, Ryan Van Bergen made a great point about Michigan being defensive end university. And he's right. The Rashawn Gary and Chase Winovich and Kwity Paye and now Aiden Hutchinson and David Ajabo and Brandon Graham, and the list goes on. And Chris Wormley and Taco Charlton. They've had a great run of defensive ends. And right now they've got arguably two of the top three in the country and the best two in the Big Ten, and Ajabo and Hutchinson. The middle of the defensive line, Mozzie Smith and Chris Hinton have come through, and depth guys like Jenkins and Upshaw and Morris have made some plays. So that group has exceeded expectation. Linebacker play has been pretty darn good. Obviously Josh Ross has been outstanding. The emergence of Junior Colson, and they've rotated guys, Nikai Hill-Green, now maybe more Michael Barrett, Jalen Harrell. And then in the secondary, they are clearly an improved group. So, they've exceeded expectations. It's been a heck of a good year so far. It's been a great year considering the expectation. And right now, if you think of the teams that would switch resumes with Michigan right now, they include, and think about this, go back 3 months and think about this: Clemson, Florida State, Miami, LSU, Auburn, Notre Dame, USC, UCLA, Texas. I mean, we could throw in some more. All those schools would love to be in the position that Michigan is in right now. But obviously people are pensive because Harbaugh teams haven't finished strong. And it starts Saturday, right? I mean, they've survived a loss. They were able to absorb a loss and still remain in the college football playoff discussion, which is hard to do, but they've done that. They got half the help they needed last Saturday with the Purdue win, and now it's a matter of taking care of business and finding another loss on the Michigan State schedule. It's all right there, and it can be done. It's just a matter of, is this team going to be different and do it? This Penn State game's a winnable game. It's a winnable game, but historically, this is where the wheels kind of start to come off. So it's a hard buy-in. The one thing I'll say is there's new coaches, guys in different positions. And so things could look a lot different with Mike McDonald, with Mike Hart, who brings a toughness to the staff, with, Coach Clinkscale, who brings a toughness to the staff. I mean, so let's see what these guys do, because it's this staff's first crack at it, right? I mean, Harbaugh's been there, done that, but it's this staff's first crack at it.
I will say this. You mentioned the team from East Lansing. I think they have two more losses coming, but we're going to talk about them only a little bit later and very briefly. But I foresee an 0-2 end to their slate. Michigan, you're right. They have absolutely got the challenge this weekend. You calling it a winnable game, and I think it is. But also, we've seen it, how tough it is out there in Penn State. Not a night game this time. Catch a break there. Noon start. Michigan's been very good in noon starts all year long. You won't have to deal with quite the level of insobriety as you would normally. But what you've got is a defense for Penn State that is as good as Michigan has seen this year, if not the best Michigan's seen this year, in my opinion, and also a quarterback in Sean Clifford who can really get it done. But you got a team that doesn't run the football well. So you mentioned Michigan's defensive ends. I got to believe that it's time to turn them loose and hope for not maybe an Allen Branch on top of Anthony Morelli, but a lot of harassment all game long.
Yeah. So you mentioned the venue. Penn State at night is the benchmark for, being down there on the field, how loud it gets, how chaotic it gets, how intimidating it can get. And the fact that Penn State is going to be, that it's not a night game helps. Michigan has been in very hostile environments this year. They're kind of used to it. They've embraced it. Whatever that team's pump up song is, they know it's coming and they can't wait for it, and they make it their own. Nebraska's night game, I would just describe as pure chaos. When you looked across at the other sideline, and this is at field level, it was hard to distinguish the fans on the field from the benches, where the fans ended and the benches began. And it mattered. Like, there was one time where JJ McCarthy was in a quarterback and he did the fake clap thing, and they were screaming at him to change a play, and he never heard him, and he ran the play, and it wasn't what they wanted run. Actually worked out, that particular play. But the point being, that chaos impacts what happens on the field. And Nebraska was chaotic. Wisconsin's an always difficult place to play. And on that particular day, the way Michigan played, they kind of took the crowd out of it. It wasn't a typical, as that game went on, it just got quieter and quieter. And eventually, literally, the Michigan students took over the empty Wisconsin student section. They all, basically moved from their seats up top down to there, and the Michigan kids loved it. Michigan State was a difficult environment. Wasn't quite the chaos that Nebraska was, but this is gonna. I mean, chances are the students won't be there when the game starts. So it's just the way it is around the Big Ten. They're kind of used to the environments. Now, as far as the actual matchup, look, I mean, when you watch Penn State, you got to get people in Clifford's face. You just have to. If you do that, you can change their offense. Johan Dotson's incredible. Talking to Mike McDonald this week, he said, when he read the scouting report on him and he started talking to his team about him, he's like, I feel like I'm describing the best player we're going to play against this year. And he's like, oh, by the way, he can throw the ball if they need him to. There's a tremendous amount of respect. But, Coach McDonald said they got a plan for him. So we will see. And also Penn State, last week Indiana had a freshman quarterback. So they were kind of limited. They were limited in what they can do. So they weren't going to exactly introduce them running the sprint to the line and snap it offense. Penn State's got a veteran offense that I bet is going to test Michigan with tempo for the first real time since the Michigan State game. So that's something they need to be prepared for.
Yeah, I talked to my Penn State insider a couple days ago, and he predicted that Penn State will throw the ball 50 to 60 times. He said they can't run it at all. He said basically, I mean, you're talking about 1.8 yards per run, and so it becomes a matter of, if that is the case, can Michigan get the kind of heat on Clifford that forces the mistakes and can keep that offense pinned in a little bit.
So Michigan, I mean, look, if Penn State had a pretty good game against Ohio State, for instance, really possessed the ball, moved the chains, didn't quite do enough. But I think Michigan's defense is better than Ohio State's. And so at this point, so, can they keep them in check, and then can they score? At this point, we don't know who's suiting up for Michigan. Offensively, I watch guys lined up to go into the tent. There were so many players hurt. Anthony, AJ Henning, obviously Eric All didn't play, Blake Corum, Cade McNamara was in and out of the tent a couple of times. So who's gonna line up for the Michigan offense is a concern at this point. Maybe we'll get a sense as the week goes by, but probably not. And then as far as Penn State's run game, here's the interesting thing about Penn State's run game that Coach McDonald said is they do so much RPO that if you ignore the run, that's when they hit you with a gash play in the run game, because they can change on the fly and take advantage of a light box or a formation that is conducive to them running the ball. So, yeah, it's not like you can ignore the run. You have to show respect because that's when they can get you.
On the other side of it, it's reasonable to assume that Penn State wants Cade McNamara to throw the football. They've got a couple of high draft choices back there in the secondary, and they understand that Michigan is likely going to be limited in its running back array. I mean, you saw Blake Corum go out last week. Mike Hart, as you would expect, completely non-committal as to whether he or Donovan Edwards might be ready for this one. You have to be ready for a situation where it's Haskins again primarily. I got to believe that Penn State wants to line up and stack him up, make Michigan have to throw the football.
Well, yeah, and the last opponent that kind of did that was Michigan State, and so Michigan did throw the football, and they threw it with a degree of efficiency. The best run defense they've played this year is Wisconsin, so Michigan hit them up top with 3 touchdown passes, 2 to Cornelius Johnson, the 1 to Dalen Baldwin. So they've had some success through the air when asked to do it. Again, it goes back to who's lining up for Michigan. I mean, at this point, Andrew Anthony, we thought had maybe emerged. Is he going to be available? AJ Henning's a threat in the reverse game. And really, you kind of need him in there on punt return, because if Jamon Green's out, DJ Turner on punt return becomes a bit of a dicey situation, because who's next at the corner spot? They've played 3 corners almost the entire year. And I think it might be Jaden McBurrows as the next guy, a true freshman. But, hey, look, this is the Big Ten, right? Things like this happen. They won at Nebraska with their 5th guard on the field at the end of the game. So you just have to find a way, and guys have to make plays, and guys have to step up. And maybe the guy that needs to provide a little something this week is Tavier Dunlap. Maybe he becomes, from off the radar to playing a role, maybe not a prominent role, but a role in this game. Guys, this is typical of Big Ten seasons, is as the year goes on, guys that weren't playing not only have to play, but they have to play major roles, or at least supportive roles, late in the year in some big games.
It's as big a stage as it gets. You were talking about teams that would love to trade places with Michigan right now. There's one team that would like to trade places with Michigan as it pertains to the college football playoff, and that would be the team from East Lansing. I know you don't relish talking about this, but two big things with Jim Harbaugh acknowledging the Big Ten got a hold of him with regard to that strip sack touchdown against Michigan State that turned out to be overturned. And then now you have the college football playoff that has Michigan at number 6, Michigan State at number 7. Spartan fans going ballistic, basically, and Michigan fans kind of saying, "Well, it was overturned in the replay booth."
So look, if a Spartan fan wants to trade places with Michigan, I mean, you shouldn't want to. It's silly. They're the team that still controls their own destiny. They are, and so they can be upset, but what they're upset about is simply the number attached to their name. These playoff rankings, and I've said this for a couple of weeks, they're like temporary housing. Each week you get a new temporary place to live while your permanent residence is being built. And you're still finding out if you can afford the countertops and the high-end appliances and the hot tub and all that. You're still trying to figure that out while you're living in your temporary housing. And each week you have to move in your temporary housing. But that's all it is temporary. Secondly, Michigan and Michigan State's to-do list to make the playoff hasn't changed at all. They both have to win out. Michigan might need a Michigan State loss, probably needs a Michigan State loss along the line, and a loss eliminates either team. So I think it's a big nothing burger that it's the only thing they really had to talk about out of those rankings, and yet it doesn't mean anything for the bigger picture. It doesn't, because the only way it really matters is if both teams run the table. But even then, Michigan State will get the extra data point by playing in the Big Ten title game. If you're a Michigan fan thinking about a future debate, here's the future debate that is looming, and that is if Michigan runs the table, doesn't play in the Big Ten title game, sitting there at 11-1, do they get in over an undefeated Cincinnati team?
Yeah, I hear you, and I would say this: as I said, I don't think Michigan State wins those last 2 games against Ohio State and Penn State, but that remains to be seen. We're here at Chrysler Arena at the moment, and I will say this: you've got people very jazzed about the basketball season. Another thing that is temporary, you talked about what's temporary. One thing that's temporary is as being the team picked to win the Big Ten. You got to back that up. Give me your thumbnail on what you think is coming down the road here for Michigan basketball.
Very talented team, obviously very young team, new parts to integrate. That's always somewhat unpredictable. When you have those new parts, look for early in the year, Juwan Howard to experiment a little bit, try guys in different roles. Ultimately, you just want to be playing your best when the conference season begins. And so, I don't read too much into these early season games. And you want to be playing your best when the conference season begins. You want to be playing better when the conference season ends because people don't really remember who won the Big Ten tournament when, let's say, you lose in the first round to Loyola. People kind of forget who won the Big Ten tournament. So you need to go out and grow and stay healthy. And I think we saw a little bit of it earlier in the week with Michigan State. You don't know how your transfers are going to work out. You don't know how your freshmen are going to look and which players made a big jump. I mean, you can't help but hear all the buzz about Moussa Diabate and what an impact he's going to have on this season. Caleb Houston's considered a high draft pick kid. So there's a lot of reason to be excited. And Juwan Howard's, he got this thing up and running pretty quickly, didn't he? And I don't see it slowing down.
Yeah, I don't either. And when you're building around, a guy like Hunter Dickinson, and you've got component parts, you get an Eli Brooks, as an X factor that comes back and has that kind of defense. And you're just this is not a freshman takeover like when Juwan Howard was a freshman. It is okay. You've got a really good team that went a long way last year and lost some, yes, but you're just plugging in the best of the best of those freshmen. I think it is a fantastic situation for this team to start out.
Yeah, and Eli Brooks coming back is so big. It's so big for them to have a super senior and a guy who's familiar with what it's like to, I mean, coach on the floor. Those things are so freshmen get everybody excited, but seniors get coaches excited, and guys with experience get coaches excited. And Eli Brooks, when he got hurt late last year and kind of, was slowed going into the postseason, that was obviously, between him and, losing livers, those things really hurt that team's chance to make a significant run. They had a great year, but you always wonder what would have happened had Isaiah Livers been 100% healthy for that postseason run. But those are the breaks. So, but Eli Brooks coming back is a huge deal for this team. He's also really versatile. He can defend a lot of different positions, and he can bring the ball up the floor. He can hit a three if you need him to. His versatility is just one of those guys that helps you. He helps you in all facets of the game.
The other guy that's very versatile, Doug Karsch. He brings you from the sidelines on the Wolverine.com every single week in the football season. And then he transitions from radio to this little television venture seamlessly. Doug, great to have you with us. We'll do this again soon.
All right, JB.